All right, let's get right into it. There's a really complex situation unfolding in the Persian Gulf, and we need to break down what's happening. So, we're 3 weeks into this conflict, right? And things just took a really sharp turn with this strike on Kharg Island. This is a critical nerve center for Iran. But this wasn't just any attack. So, how can hitting just one island threaten, the entire global economy? Well, the answer pulls back the curtain on a super high-stakes strategy playing out in the world's most important oil choke point. And believe me, it's setting the stage for a very dangerous new phase. Okay, so let's break this down. What's so interesting here is that the conflict's kind of moved past that initial shock and awe moment. We're in a new phase now, a much more dangerous one. And what that means is both sides are digging in. They're settling in for the long haul. It's not about those first initial punches anymore. Now it's a systematic game of trying to build up leverage to get the upper hand before anyone even thinks about sitting down at the negotiating table. And that brings us right back to that strike on Kharg Island. Look, this wasn't about causing mass destruction. Not at all. This was about sending a message. A very specific, very calculated message. The strategy was, well, surgical. Think about it. The strike was basically a signal flare. They hit military stuff, air defenses, naval facilities, but they very, very deliberately left the island's crucial oil export terminals completely untouched. So what's the big takeaway here? It was a deliberate show of force. The message being sent was crystal clear. Hey, we can turn off your entire economic lifeline whenever we want, but for now, we're choosing not to. It's all about applying pressure, not causing total paralysis. And all that strategic pressure, well, it's boiling over into a full-blown crisis, right at the global economy's most vulnerable point, the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, look at it. This narrow little channel is the only way out from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. And this is exactly where the real danger of this whole thing spinning out of control is concentrated. And you can already see the economic fallout. Plain as day. You've got Iranian fast boats and drones harassing the shipping lanes, and the result? All these huge commercial tankers are just clustering outside the strait. They're literally too afraid to go through. So why should you care? Why does that matter? Get this. A staggering 1/5 of all the world's oil that travels by sea has to go through this one tiny waterway. So when it gets clogged up, believe me, the entire global economy feels that squeeze. Okay. So, with the world's energy supply hanging in the balance, it's no surprise that some major players are starting to put a plan into motion. They have to respond to this threat. So you've got countries like the UK and South Korea stepping up, looking at providing naval escorts. And they're each doing it for their own critical reasons, right? The UK already has a big naval presence there it needs to protect. And South Korea, their entire economy basically depends on the oil that comes through that strait. And the US is playing a really interesting role here. They're acting more like a coordinator, not the lone cop on the beat. It's a strategy of burden sharing. And the whole point is to build a big coalition. That gives the mission more global legitimacy, and frankly, it makes it a lot harder politically for Iran to push back. So, what does this international naval shield actually look like in practice? Let me tell you, it's a whole lot more complex than just a few warships sailing next to some oil tankers. And what's really amazing is how fast this could all happen. I mean, the military command structures, the ships, the people, they're pretty much already in place over there. So the biggest hurdle isn't getting the ships ready, it's getting the politicians to agree. Once they give the green light, we could see the first convoys setting sail in less than a week. That's fast. Right. So a modern convoy is basically a multi-layered security bubble. On the outside, you've got surveillance, drones and planes, looking for trouble way before it gets close. Then you've got the escort layer, your frigates and destroyers, right next to the tankers, protecting them. And then you have a third layer, a much more offensive one, the strike force. In that third layer, that's where the real teeth of this operation are. It's built around something called a Marine Expeditionary Unit, or an MEU. The best way to think about it is like a self-contained crisis response force in a box. It brings everything it needs, its own helicopters, its own ground troops, all ready to go. And this right here is the core concept, the shield and hammer. The escort ships, the destroyers, the frigates, they are the defensive shield protecting the tankers. But the MEU, that's the offensive hammer. It gives the coalition the power to not just defend, but to go on the attack and eliminate threats right where they start. So, you've got all these pieces moving on the chessboard. It all leads to the one critical question everyone is asking: what happens next? Well, experts are watching for three things in the next few days. First, do the convoy operations actually begin? That's the trigger. If they do, you watch for Iranian retaliation. Maybe they strike oil facilities in neighboring countries. And if that happens, the coalition could hit back with expanded strikes on Iran's own economic targets. You see how this works? It's an escalatory ladder, and each step up gets more and more dangerous. But that brings up the most dangerous question of all. What happens if a convoy actually gets attacked? This is exactly the scenario that Hammer was designed for. And you can bet the military planners have a list of answers ready to go. Take a look at these 5 locations. These are the main hubs for Iran's asymmetric naval forces. Now, what does that mean? It means Iran knows it can't match the coalition ship for ship, so they don't even try. Instead, they rely on swarms of fast attack boats, hidden missile sites, and surveillance outposts. So if a convoy gets challenged, these bases are almost certainly the first places that MEU Hammer is going to fall. So with the shields and the hammer both moving into place, you have to ask, is a direct fight in the world's most critical waterway now just inevitable? The pieces are definitely being set for a showdown that could impact all of us, from the price we pay at the pump to the stability of the entire global economy.